We love a good heist movie, infiltration mission, or espionage thriller, and there's no class in Dungeons & Dragons that brings that to life quite like the Rogue.
My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. And today, we're going to look at what happens when the entire party decides to go rogue.
There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
Dice Goblins rejoice, for Wizards of the Coast has partnered with this week's sponsor, Serious Dice, to bring you Acererak's Treasure Packs, random packs of dice that you can use for your D&D games.
If you like dice, and we assume that you do, then you might be really interested in this product. They come in these lovely little packages that have, surprise, random dice inside. They also include tokens that you can use in your game.
We've got a couple of packs. Let's crack them open.
So inside the package, you get a random dice bag, variety of different colors, and you get a random set of dice and a single token that you can use in your game. The dice that I got are black, white, and gold, and I acquired the Bardic Inspiration and my nice yellow and red classic dice bag.
I got... Oh, that's the green devil face. And the sphere... Is that the Sphere of Annihilation? Oh! I don't know if they did this out. This is the rarest coin.
So if you are interested in getting your hands on some random assorted dice and some really cool tokens to use in your game, then make sure to check the links below to get your hands on Acererak's Treasure Packs today.
You can also use the promo code DD Treasure Dice, and you'll get a 5th extra pack for free if you buy 4 or more packs.
So thank you very much to Serious Dice for sponsoring this week's episode and giving us some amazing dice and tokens to use in our games. And now, on to this week's episode.
So far, we've looked at the Wizard, the Paladin, the Bard, and the Cleric as themes around when every single player character in the party decides to play the exact same class. But we have really been looking forward to what happens when everybody decides they're going to roll up a rogue.
As usual with this series, we're looking at a party of 4 player characters, and none of them can choose the same subclass, although all of them have to be the same class, in this case, the Rogue. No multi-classing is allowed, and we are looking at how they perform in all pillars of play, being combat, exploration, and social. We're going to put together our best party, discuss what we think would work or might not work, take a look at the strengths, weaknesses, and give an overall ranking on where we think this lands, as well as look at some of the themes and ideas that you can really bring to life if you're planning an all-rogue campaign or adventure.
In many respects, the Rogue is the archetypal adventurer. Rough and tumble, ready for anything, willing to do dirty deeds dirt cheap. And so this means that a party of all rogues really finds a natural home in so many stories that we draw inspiration for our Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. From Conan to Carmen Sandiego, fantasy fiction is full of thieves, scoundrels, liars, killers, and worse. And so it's a rich field to draw on for campaign ideas. And I think that the idea of a roguish band of thieves is probably the most well-defined, next to perhaps the fighters.
I would say even in our D&D movie that we got recently, which is Honor Among Thieves, even though not everybody was playing a rogue, the thief archetype was the center stage of that narrative. Some of my favorite movies to watch are the heist movies. I love Mission Impossible. I love the Ocean's 11 movies. I love The Italian Job. I love those sort of movies where a team of people, each one specializing in a specific set of skills, has to grab the MacGuffin from the well-protected location, and they come up with their schemes and plans to do so. I love almost every movie that brings that to life, and what I love about the all-rogue party is that by choosing our different subclasses, choosing our expertise and our skills, we actually really get to define each rogue almost like those characters in those movies and bring to life that expertise, specialties, and let every rogue shine in their own way.
It really puts a spotlight on how the rogue, despite being a class with surprisingly few options, especially in the core class, can really yield some fantastically diverse characters based on how you roleplay all those characters, with the character-specific skills and expertise choices and their subclass features, giving them that little bit of extra definition to define exactly how they're going to engage with the story and what role they're going to fill. And so I especially feel that the All Rogue Party captures that very mundane underdogs feeling that you're also going to see in things like gangster movies or political intrigue thriller films. Any of those sort of archetypes are things that you can really draw on for this type of campaign. You could imagine even drawing inspiration from something like Grand Theft Auto for the All Rogue Party and really going into that crime drama, dark underbelly sort of world with the story that you want to tell. And I think that it's also a wonderful opportunity to play characters that really have a lot of flaws, that have a lot of vices, and that band of thieves that everyone's all in it for themselves, but they all got to work together to bring back that one big score or that last big score.
I even think of movies like Rogue One being a great example of you can be a band of heroes as well, even with the All Rogue Party, trying to steal the vital information from a tyrant or a rival nation.
Yeah, and that's where you might even take it further into, say, like drawing on inspiration from James Bond or spy thrillers or even detective stories as well. I think that that whole spectrum of espionage, crime, investigation is really, really rich ground for this. And so in a lot of respects, I think that the All Rogue Party, as I've kind of said before, there is more inspiration to draw on for this, especially because you can step outside the bounds of fantasy and find inspiration, because I think the rogue is such a portable archetype.
And I think that when we start moving into looking at the 4 classes, this one's actually tough because a lot of the movies that I'm talking about have parties and squads of like 5-6 characters, each one being a role. And I actually think if you look at the entire rogues gallery of options of subclasses, you could have a large group playing each of the subclasses of the rogue and be that iconic infiltration party. But since we're picking 4, let's try to pick 4 of the iconic roles that you need for every heist or otherwise that we've mentioned.
Okay, so in looking at the subclasses, I think one of the things that brings together all of these sort of themes, especially more modern ones, is in the heist, oftentimes you split the party. And this means that narratively, you need some sort of communications technology, whether it's walkie-talkies or phones or being wired up with each other with like an earpiece or something like that.
The man in the van.
Exactly, right? I'm also thinking, another one that comes to mind, Charlie's Angels.
Yes.
Right? Something that is giving everybody this whole thing that lets them connect. And fortunately, there is a rogue subclass that gives us this in the form of the soul knife.
Now, the soul knife isn't going to be our man in the van because we actually want the soul knife to be one of the infiltrators. But the soul knife gives you the telepathy ability that allows you to have that open communication as if you all had an earpiece.
Yes.
And were able to communicate.
So I think this is the cornerstone of the party. And I think one of the interesting things about the soul knife as well is that they bring their psi-empowered knack. And that's going to let them roll their psionic energy dice and add those to skill checks. And so in a party of rogues, we're going to have a bunch of different specialists, but the soul knife is kind of going to be the jack of all trades, because with their psychic abilities, they're going to be able to pick up the slack of, hey, we need 2 people that are really good at the skill. Or with the soul knife, you can also be melee or ranged interchangeably because of your conjuring your psychic blades. It's a very wide field, and then you also at higher levels have teleportation and invisibility, which I think are really critical magical abilities to add to the infiltrator kit.
I think that when we look at the soul knife, what's interesting is not every heist movie has this, but there's inevitably going to be something that goes wrong, and the soul knife plays the position of the extra body that's there.
The fixer.
The fixer.
Yeah.
It's like, we're having an issue with so and so who's right now being the face of the party, they can jump in and cover. Or if the infiltration is going wrong, they can jump in and help infiltrate. They
Yeah.
can kind of be the everything man.
And so with this character, you can go any way you want with it. With the other characters in the party, I think that we're going to choose each character to focus around a secondary ability score. Everyone's going to go super dexterous. But with the others, we want to have someone who focuses on intelligence based skills, someone based on wisdom based skills, and someone based on charisma based skills. And I think that's going to give us a really good spread across the rogues. So, going down the line, intelligence.
For intelligence, I think that there's an obvious choice here, and every good heist thriller has the gadgets person. And the gadgets person has all of those tricks that they can pull out to help with infiltration, help with disguises, all of that. The arcane trickster is our gadgets rogue.
Yeah. They're the one that's going to bring in the critical spell support, the critical spell casting. They're going to bring in invisibility. They're going to bring in charm person. They can have a familiar if they want to. And with their spells that they can choose outside of enchantment and illusion, they're going to bring in that problem solving tool that gets through the really hard obstacles that the rogues just can't skill through.
And this is also going to give you your intelligence, as well as it's going to give you the ability to cast an invisible mage hand that can use lockpicks.
Yeah, so this gadget guy is definitely going to be our investigator, and is also going to be our thieves' tools expert, I think.
I think that that's important. Now, so we have the brains for gadgets, but we also need the brains for the plan.
And this is where I think the mastermind, as a wisdom-based character, really is going to shine. One of the things that rogues really need a lot of when we've got a whole party of them is lots of sources of advantage. The Arcane Trickster is going to help with this with some of their spells, but the Mastermind's ability to simply help someone at range as a bonus action is going to mean that whenever someone needs to land that sneak attack, the Mastermind is going to be like, here it is. They're the tactician in the moment. They're leading this whole thing. And I think that even though the Mastermind really kind of in its name says, oh, be the intelligence-based character, there's really nothing about the subclass that requires you to specialize in any one of the mental ability scores. So I think wisdom, being that cool under pressure character, is going to be the play here.
I think wisdom actually makes a lot of sense, because wisdom is street smarts, which, the gadgets person probably has a lot of knowledge about the things that they're dealing with. In this case, magic and infiltration and using their abilities. Whereas wisdom is it's going to give you things like perception. So you're more aware of your surroundings. Your ability,
instinct.
It's instinct. And so the mastermind, even their lesser used abilities, the mastermind was never high on my radar as the greatest rogue. But actually in an all rogue party, the mastermind really sings, because even their ability to scout an area and gather intel. They have the insightful manipulator ability, which means that if they are scouting out an area and making the plan, if you have eyes to set up your ambush and set up your heist, you can kind of use the mastermind to gather intel on the type of creatures and how dangerous the situation is before you even go in. The mastermind also may not be our face of the party. We'll get to the face in a second. But with their ability to mimic other voices and languages, they can actually act as a secondary face. If they need to help with the forefront infiltration, being the person who's actually talking to the guards, they might be able to pull it off because of their mimicry ability.
Indeed. I think with all of these characters, you're going to have a lot of skills between them all, and there's going to be overlap, and that's a good thing for this party. You don't want you want everyone to have something that they're good at, but I think with all the rogues, you want also to have that synergy between each other and the ability to help each other out. And the mastermind really is the glue that pulls that all together.
So we've got our man in the van, so to speak, our gadgets person, and we have our planner. The last thing we need is the face of the group, which I think is going to be the swashbuckler.
Totally. The swashbuckler brings the charisma skills to the table, And they're also going to probably be the most melee oriented character, I think. I think with the Mastermind, they're probably going to be our ranged oriented character as well, probably using a crossbow or maybe even a bow and attacking from the distance. The Arcane Trickster might also be melee too, but I think the Swashbuckler, they're the one that can go toe to toe as best as a rogue can.
And the fact is that the swashbuckler, not only do they benefit from having good charisma, so you're going to be the persuader, the deceptor, but you also are, or the deceiver, but you also are going to have that really nice ability where you can get sneak attack when you're one on one with a target, which really allows you to do this really cool setup where the swashbuckler runs in, chooses the target that's going to be attacked, gets sneak attack against them, setting up sneak attack for everybody else.
Because they're adjacent and all the other party members can come in, sneak attack, disengage, and they're all safe. And the Swashbuckler is still able to sneak attack one on one.
The swashbuckler also gets that ability to add their charisma modifier to their initiative rolls. So they have a better chance of going first in combat. So this actually, again, a lot of the rogues seem to really work well in an all-rogue party.
It's a great gang operation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have our party. Those are the four. I do want to give an honorable mention. I think that if I was broadening the horizons on this, the thief and the assassin are two that feel really iconic in this sort of heist scenario. The thief is your person who gets inside to get the MacGuffin, and your assassin is there when things inevitably go wrong to be the hitman.
Yeah, the assassin's biggest strength in an all-rogue party is that everyone's going to be good at stealth, and surprise is going to be the lifeblood of this party. They need it to survive a lot of combat encounters, which means the assassin's going to be living large because they have an entire party that wants the same thing they do, to win initiative, get surprise, and take enemies out as quickly as possible. It's not a make or break thing, the assassin, but it really would help a lot if you have the space for them. I think the thief's most valuable asset that they bring to the all-rogue party is their 13th level use magic device feature, which allows them to attune to any magic item. One of the biggest weaknesses that we'll get into with this party is magical support. They really don't have anything. Even the Arcane Trickster isn't bringing much. It's very limited. And so that higher level feature of, hey, turns out the party actually is here to steal a staff of power, and now someone can actually use it, could make a very big difference. But I do think that, unlike in Baldur's Gate 3, the Thief Rogue is not nearly as good in tabletop.
No, I mean, they do get some cool abilities that help you with infiltration. The only problem there is that other rogues also get abilities that help with infiltration. And so even though you can scale walls better and jump better, it's not as good as being able to teleport.
Yeah. So I would give honor. So I agree. Those two get my honorable mention. But I think that overall, the Arcane Trickster, the Mastermind, the Soul Knife, and the Swashbuckler, I think present the most synergy with each other. And this is the thing with the Rogue Party, is they really do rely on teamwork to survive in combat, exploration, and social interaction. Even though they all have their area of specialization, if they are not working together, they're going to die.
Which is interesting because a lot of people like to play their rogues as the lone wolf, but I actually think in the all-rogue party, and if you look at the examples that we've presented from media, all of them are about teamwork and everybody relying on each other, not even in a little way. In those heist movies, they rely on each other to the point where it's like, you have a job to do. You're going to go do it. And I need to trust that you are going to get the job that you're doing done so that I can do the job that I need to done so that we can pull this off. Everybody needs to be immaculate in their execution. And that takes a lot of trust. So this is a party that deeply trusts each other. And I think as we get into the three pillars of play, something that I want to say is this party is going to show a lot of weaknesses, but within those weaknesses is something that I find really exciting. And that is the Razor's Edge playstyle that is happening with this party. You cannot screw up. So with our first pillar, combat. There's a few glaring weaknesses with combat with this party. They're not good at mobs. They have no AoE. Not a lot of magic. You have your Arcane Trickster. but they are excellent, absolutely excellent at choosing a target, saying that target needs to die right now, and killing it in before it even gets a chance to go in combat. If this party can get surprise, which it should be doing, and can manage a situation where they're taking out targets 1, 2, or 3 at a time. I probably wouldn't want more than 3. You want to outnumber your targets. But if you can do that, you're probably going to kill the 1, 2, or 3 targets without alerting anybody before they get a chance to even notice you. And that's the play.
I agree. This party has to approach every combat encounter almost like a puzzle to be solved. And they're going to need to sneak up on their foes, get surprise, decide which target needs to get taken out first, take them out, and if they themselves get surprised by a tougher enemy, they need to use their abilities, cunning action, disengage, dash, hide, to get out, regroup, and strike again from the shadows. Because this party, even with the Swashbuckler and the Arcane Trickster, like the Arcane Trickster could take Shield, the Swashbuckler could take things like Defensive Duelist and get some features that boost their AC and boost their resilience. They're going to have Uncanny Dodge and Evasion, but at the end of the day, this party's not going to have a lot of hit points. They're not going to be able to get their ACs very high. And if they start taking hits, they're going to go down really, really fast. They just don't have that staying power, and there's no healing.
If you're facing a mob of enemies, a horde of zombies or a bunch of goblins, it actually is surprising how overwhelmed this party gets if a group of 8 goblins, even if they're pretty high levels, can still overwhelm the party, because if they're outnumbered, they can really only attack once per turn each.
Yeah, it's a really big weakness of the rogue in general, is that they only have that one attack, and if it misses...
But this is why this razor edge playstyle, you have the mastermind helping. You have a lot of tools here that are giving each of the party members advantage in some way, and the ability to land their sneak attack. By that combined, also, I mean, if you're surprising, then you're getting advantage.
And you're hopefully getting a whole extra turn over your enemy, because you're going to need it. Yeah.
And also, if you can roll high, which the Swashbuckler will hopefully be doing in your initiative, then yes, if you can go twice before your enemies do, and you have a whole party, then you're getting 8, hopefully, sneak attacks in before the party gets to go, which is a lot of damage. But if you flub any of that, you have to get out.
Yeah. You could argue that having a thief with a bag full of potions might give you some healing support. It's still going to be pretty limited. There's barely any crowd control to speak of. At higher levels, your Arcane Trickster probably does want to bring Hypnotic Pattern or Hold Person, so you at least have some form of crowd control to help you. And that'll be pretty potent by those higher levels of play. But until you get there, you don't have much.
So combat is actually tricky for us, but I think it sounds incredibly fun to play that way.
Yes, it's hard, but it is rewarding, and you will feel... I think that when this party solves the combat and gets through it, they're going to be thrilled, but... oh, man.
I love playing a video game that has the option to play stealth. I'm thinking of the more recent Deus Ex games.
Oh, yeah, Deus Ex.
And when you have the option in that game of playing however you want, but my favorite is the Infiltrator.
Yeah.
And I love getting that reward that you get where you finish an entire mission without anybody ever spotting you. Mm-hmm. And that's what this party's going for.
Yeah, the Ghost achievement. Yeah. You can really look at other games like Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cell or any other like stealth action games. Oh, beautiful inspiration. But it is that whole thing of once you cause the alarm, you got to hide.
Yeah.
You got to retreat.
Now, in exploration, so we do have a very strong benefit and another weakness that is pretty glaring. I think the benefit that I want to talk about first with the all-rogue party. Having played a rogue at high levels who has reliable talent, I actually have learned for myself, the rogue doesn't necessarily feel at their strongest in a combat encounter. I think that the rogue's entire shtick is to avoid combat unless they are going to win. Where a rogue really shines is when you're rolling ability, like skills.
Yeah.
Skill challenges is where the rogue, the reliable talent with the amount of expertise and skill proficiencies you have, once you gain reliable talent, you're just incinerating skill challenges.
Running the game for Wilhelm, who now at 15th level has insane plus 15 bonuses to several skill checks.
I think I'm at plus 11 or 12, but that means that because I can't roll lower than a 10, or no, it might be plus 15 now.
Yeah.
So I think
yeah.
I remember saying that I can't roll lower than a 25 in stealth.
And so for myself as a dungeon master, I just have to remember that more often because it means that you're very consistently able to get results in the 30s for a lot of stealth checks, which means conventional detection methods just completely fail to find the rogues, and the rogues are really consistently. I think one of the things that actually impresses me most about Wilhelm as the DM is your persuasion modifier is also like plus 11 or plus 12, which means that you just trivially nail DC 20 persuasion and deception checks, which feels great, but it's also something that as a DM you have to keep in mind of like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this persuasion check DC 20, and you don't realize that that's actually an automatic success for the rogue.
And that's the beauty of having a swashbuckler have expertise in
Yeah.
persuasion. And I think that when we talk about the exploration, a lot of exploration is going to be skill challenges and talking to people and navigating, which I think if we divvy up where our expertise lies with this party, you actually have a really strong, you end up with expertise in 16 out of the 18 skills.
Assuming not everyone in the party wants to take expertise in stealth,
Which they
which
probably
I think
will.
you do. And so I think that you do have to divvy them up, and you probably end up with, I think that I would go with expertise in all the social skills for the swashbuckler plus stealth. I go for expertise in thieves tools and investigation for the arcane trickster.
I would throw Arcana in there as well with
Yeah.
stealth.
Yeah. The mastermind, I do perception, insight, and probably
I could see grabbing something like, I don't know, survival, although they are wisdom based.
survival or medicine.
Survival or medicine and stealth, of course. And then the soul knife, I think, fills in our gaps.
Yeah, you double up where you think you need it and decide what else you think you need to. And you're still going to have a bunch of proficiencies. Like, I think that the party should still have at least one character who is proficient in every skill somewhere. Like, you shouldn't skip any of the proficiencies. It's just where do you put the expertises that matter.
And I think, so I think that actually when we're playing with those skill challenges, the all rogue party is going to excel in exploration. It's when we get into sort of the grittier details of can you pull anything off? As Monty likes to say, the rogue has to play by the rules.
Which is ironic because we think of them as the cheater, but like this party isn't going to have anybody that is suddenly scooping up the entire party and teleporting them. In fact, even with the arcane trickster in the party, it won't be until very high levels of play that the whole party can turn invisible. They don't have anyone who can cast Pass Without Trace. They do have a familiar in the party that can scout ahead. They do have telepathy because of the soul knife. Those are really key assets. Nobody in this party can fly unless the arcane trickster takes that as one of their spells. Nobody in this party can dispel magic, again, unless the arcane trickster takes it. There's no counter spells. There are no ways to raise the dead. There's no healing magic. There's no greater restoration. None of that is here. There's no shape shifting.
So I think the consensus here is that with exploration, the rogue is going to excel extraordinarily at any challenge they face, but they can't bend the rules in their favor in any way.
This is where, again, if you did have the thief who was bringing a bunch of scrolls with you, then you could solve that problem. And that might be the argument to have that thief in the party at higher levels. You can load up on mundane gear to help you with a bunch of these things. You can load up on, and yeah, I guess go start stealing magic items, right? Like that's where you're going to have to rely on your gear and gadgets, which I do think is a thing in the genre, right? Like that's the one side of it, is that the like, how many times in a heist movie is the first heist the band stealing the thing they need to break into the thing that gets them the thing they actually want?
Right.
So again, it comes back to that point that you made earlier, where it's like, this is a party where the weaknesses make the story more interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I actually think that we're coming out with a really cool campaign
Yeah.
concept that's like that razor's edge play style of this party that needs to be precise with all of their actions.
Resourceful. too.
Resourceful.
Yeah. Going on to social interaction, again, play by the rules.
But I do think, again, the same with exploration. The rogue doesn't really necessarily excel in social situations, but because of the combination of having one rogue in their party, the swashbuckler, who takes charisma as their secondary attribute, and then takes expertise in persuasion and deception and intimidation, and then once you hit level 10 and gain the ability to never roll lower than a 10 on those skill checks, once you have that feature and you have expertise, you're not rolling lower than a 10, you can adequately talk your way into or out of most situations. Not the same way as a bard, but I don't think that they're weak here either.
No, I don't think that they're weak. It once again comes into that fact, is that there's not necessarily going to be anyone in the party that is like, oh, we need detect thoughts now, or you have to rely on insight. There's nobody in the party that is going to necessarily mind control everybody with suggestion or dominate person, but you are going to have people with those very high deception checks and those very high persuasion checks when you need them. I also think that the mastermind can make sure that you have advantage on these checks. I think that the arcane trickster can also bring in those critical areas of like, here's enhance ability or charm person. So you've got a couple key ways to solve it, which means that the party is good at it. Again, it comes back to that whole thing of like, you don't really have any way to break the rules.
I think overall, though, this party is in the middle ground on most of these because they excel in some areas, but they all have a pretty big weakness, which is interesting because, again, I think that feeds into the playstyle that we're talking about. I think that we've already highlighted a lot of the weaknesses present in this party, but to go further, I think the weaknesses standing out are that you need to attack with definite precision, knowing that you're going to kill the target you're attacking. You can't screw up in combat, otherwise you're dead. You have to rely on your skills, which are extremely reliable. But if you want to do anything outside of what your skills offer, you're unable to do so, except for the arcane trickster, who you don't want to put too much on their shoulders to be like, you need to do everything.
Well, one way that you could cover that gap, to be fair, is as a rogue, you may have the opportunities to take feats like Fey Touched, Shadow Touched, Magic Initiate, Ritual Caster. These could be feats that by picking them up, you do add to the overall arsenal. Rogues do get an extra feat over base classes. We could also look at ancestry and lineage features. So by playing a custom lineage, or by everyone playing elves and dwarves or firbolgs and gnomes, you're going to get a couple extra magical abilities added into the party. I think another key thing to not overlook, dark vision.
Yeah.
You know what's going to really kill this party is if someone has to have a torch.
Yeah. You either want to play all ancestries that have dark vision, or I also imagine if I was the DM running this campaign, I would have them have a base of operations and they have some gear ready. I would give the entire party goggles of night because it's something that they've acquired to do their job.
I feel like you got to earn that first. Like I definitely would. It
They
would
have
be
to
cool.
break into the goggles of night factory.
Exactly.
And steal the
steal the
goggles.
night vision goggles. Yeah.
So they need to acquire. But yeah, I think that you want to get them to have dark vision because they want to be in the dark.
Yeah, and I think in that respect, like again, the fact that they don't have these tools innately, creating the story of, hey, the rogues need to steal the things that they need to do to escalate it, is a really cool campaign premise that I can 100% get behind.
Their main goal is to steal the MacGuffin from the well-guarded castle. But before they do so, they need to steal a guard outfit for the face of the party. They need to steal the goggles of night for their infiltration. Like each person in the party needs one item to complete their infiltration technique, and you have the locations maybe around. I could see this being a single city campaign.
Well, it's that whole measure of like, if one character has a hat of disguise, so they have disguise self.
Yeah.
Or if they're able to get like a cloak of the bat, so that they can turn into a bat and they can fly around a little bit. Or someone can get the boots of flying or slippers of spider climbing. That idea of like stealing the magic item that gives them the ability. Even I remember actually in Oblivion, in the Gray Fox questline, you had to steal the pair of boots so that you could survive the giant fall at the end of that questline. That whole element is cool. And so if we come to the overall picture of how this ranks up, in an objective sense, this party is way weaker than a lot of the other parties we've looked at already.
I think that they are a straight up B, but it's a B that I want to play.
I could see the argument for giving them a C. But I agree with you. You embrace it because it's fun.
I think that this is a party who their weaknesses show, but their strengths are there to... It actually makes you realize what a rogue is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Because they are supposed to be unseen, and they are supposed to attack from the shadows. They are supposed to pinpoint a target and kill it and then disappear. They need to be precise, they need to be specific, and they need to be flawless in their execution. What I love about the campaign idea, their triumphs are going to feel sweeter. Mm-hmm. And when they roll a 1, or when they have those failures, they're going to feel harsher.
Can I also say, just as an aside, I also feel that this style of campaign and this style of play, if you're like, I really, really like this style of game, I think that it might play better in a system that's not D&D.
I'm going to both agree and disagree with you.
Okay.
Blades in the Dark, if we wanted to run a heist, you should just be playing Blades in the Dark.
And I think that also Call of Cthulhu as an investigative horror type thing, like where the characters feel very mortal. Like there's an argument for COC and Blades in the Dark.
And I think that we should be playing those games to bring this fantasy to life. But I also think that this fantasy actually works really well here in D&D with the all-rogue party. If everybody at the table says, I want to play a rogue, and D&D is your favorite game, and you can't convince your players to try Blades in the Dark, I still would gladly run or play in the all-rogue heist campaign.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
It's going to play really well, and I think that even if you aren't going to be able to convince your party and your players to try Blades in the Dark, which I do think that if you are seriously considering an all-rogue campaign, you should seriously look at Blades in the Dark. If for no other reason than stealing the systems from Blades in the Dark of clocks and the hideouts actually probably give you the kind of the meta structure that the campaign needs to really sing. Like we have run heists in...
And you used a clock.
I did. Well, that was for our Rooked Untold Tale of Drakkenheim, where we did have the artificer, the monk, and the rogue. Like that was a lot of fun. But again, you do have to think about what is the flavor that you want to get with this, and where can you draw on other role-playing games to really bring this concept to life. I do agree with you. I think it works in D&D. It's just one of those things that, like, consider it. Like, if it excites you, this is a great branching off point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that I get excited every time we do one of these episodes, but it's surprising how fun this sounds. I love I mean, they're my favorite. It's my favorite way to play video games that offer up the option. I'm even thinking of like Link trying to sneak into the castle in Ocarina of Time, where he has to hide in the shrubs and avoid the guards.
Oh, I know that there's so many things, and this is the irony of it, is that I think that that if you measure up the strength of the party, the bards and the wizards just completely blow this one out of the water.
Paladins can annihilate anything.
There's going to be combat encounters that these rogues just cannot defeat that the paladins can.
But this party doesn't want to defeat those combat encounters. They want to avoid them and sneak past them.
Yeah, yeah.
They want to kill the one guard in front of the door, unlock the door, steal the MacGuffin, and get out. Most of the castle never even saw them.
And conceptually, that makes the concept, and I think the number of things that you can draw on for inspiration, the stories you can tell with this, those themes of crime and vice and desperation are so palpable here that it's an S tier campaign. Like, it will be a very, very memorable campaign.
This party's performance in all pillars of play as an all-rogue party compared to the other ones available is B. The campaign concept is S tier, and I love it. Like, I love it so much, and I want more people to be doing infiltration campaigns and adventures.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So I do think that, you know, sitting down to ask those, it's so interesting as we've gone through what happens when you play a single class party and the campaign concepts that are possible. I really want to play all of these campaigns.
I think that there's something really cool with everybody playing the same class in almost any class.
Yeah. And I do think as well, like, all of these show strengths of, you know, you don't actually have to adhere to that rule to play it. There's a lot of ways that you could play that heist party by having, a ranger and an artificer. And if you have that diversity, a lot of these ideas work outside of the single class concept, but it really sings with the rogues.
It is really beautiful to consider that you could take this idea and, like we did with Rooked, the artificer is the gadgets guy.
Yeah.
Then you have your shadow monk, you have your gloomstalker ranger, maybe a couple rogues, and you have this really cool party. If I was an artificer and I was the man in the van and I just had like the getaway and the demolitions and stuff.
That's so good.
Which is how I played my character in Rooked, is I was like, I'm here to be the demolitions, explosions, and but I did have some fun moments where I cast disguise self and pretended to be a repairman, and like it was so good. So there are a lot of ways to bring this concept to life, and if you have played a heist or an all-rogue party in another way, I really want to hear about how those adventures went in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please become a patron of our show, get on our patron-only Discord server, chat with us. All that's down in the description below.
And if you want to see us playing a heist, you can check out our one-shot that we did in our World of Drakkenheim called Rooked, right up over here.
And we've been covering lots of ideas for all single class parties in our video series right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.